At Dacia, we put together some of our learnings, and we call this 9 signs you're doing DevOps wrong. I'm not actually all that keen on the title because, in fact, making mistakes is a good idea, as long as you fail fast and you learn from those failings. But one of the things you want to do is overcome a fear of failure. Nonetheless, we've seen things that organizations do. We've grouped them under 3 headings: management of people, engineering, and organization structure. And while they're signs that you're doing things wrong, they're also rites of passage in some instance. And one of the things to look at is how quickly am I responding to these signs? Am I identifying them soon enough? So hopefully you'll learn from these and be able to identify them in your own organizations. So if we start with organization, I guess generally the way to think about organization structure for Agile is it's going to be flatter, because it needs to be closer to the business and less hierarchical and also less siloed. But in spite of that, one of the things that we see happening all the time is the silos remain. So dev are handing it off to test or handing it off to release. And the problem with that is the amount of tacit knowledge that gets lost. If you have everybody together in the one team, and done means either pre-prod or prod, then they're all working hand in hand and there's no handoffs, and there's less waste, it's more efficient. The second one is having removed all the silos, you put in a new silo, and we call that the DevOps team. And now devs are driving people nuts looking for the release scripts, and ops are driving people nuts looking for their deployment scripts. Again, you put them all in the one team. And then I guess the last one is called cargo cult. It's pretty well understood in Agile world, maybe not so much in a DevOps world, but the idea here, it originates with the Melanesian population who had a belief system based on their ancestors sending them food and drink in ships. And when World War II kicked off and the US Air Force arrived, their belief system was validated. And unfortunately, when they left, they started doing things like building, straw planes and straw radars and so forth. So with Agile and with DevOps, sometimes people have a very kind of happy attitude towards it. This is the answer to all my problems, and they start doing the ceremonies, but they're not getting it. They're not actually measuring and seeing how accurate their estimates were. They're not thinking and talking about velocity and cycle time and so forth. But as far as they're concerned, they are actually doing Agile working. Okay, so moving on then and looking a little bit at the engineering side of things. I guess one of the first things that we see here is people thinking that tooling and Agile are the same thing. So we do a fair bit of work with the Atlassian folks and their Jira Software product. So you see organizations who buy product that has beautiful Scrum and Kanban boards in there, and they find a way to disable all that and work in a waterfall fashion. So we often encourage people to start with Post-its and then move from there into tools, because process first and then tooling. On the upside, we see that a lot of organizations want to treat their servers like pets and nurse them back to health, rather than treating them like cattle, where you have scripts to shut down a server and reboot another one while going live. It's not to say that you don't subsequently come back and understand what went wrong with the 6th server, but you don't stop everything to get there. You do it in a sort of a post-mortem sense. I guess the last one is, DevOps is all about automation, particularly test, release, and deployment. And oftentimes organizations try to do this, but stay manual. So they actually have checklists and run books that they're manually working their way through. If you're not automating it, you're probably not going in the right general direction. Okay, talking about the management of people, I touched on it just earlier, but I think if your organization, and we see this a lot in insurance companies, if they're so risk averse that really careers have been bombed out because people failed, well, it's probably not a good place to start. And we often recommend in a pilot you communicate everything, including the failures. And the failures are, it's not that you want to be constantly making them or repeating them, but it's that people are encouraged to actually try and experiment, and then the fail is okay if they do that. I think the next one is this idea, again, it's a waterfall concept that you're finished. So that's the end of DevOps. Let's move on to the next project. In fact, DevOps is all about continuous improvement. So when you do an initial value stream mapping type exercise and you're looking at left to right, you're also looking at, I've now removed a bottleneck, I've moved on to the next one, but when you've removed all those bottlenecks, then it's possible to improve further. And you keep improving until the cost of looking for the improvement is greater than any potential benefit you might derive. The last is to do with cultural issues, and there's a guy called Westrom in the 60s who came up with the idea that there was 3 different types of cultures, pathological, bureaucratic and generative, and I've had customers say to me that their leadership team is all 3 of those within the 1 hour. But I think the key point here is, I'll explain it first of all. Pathological means that in a scenario where a messenger comes with some bad news, you shoot the messenger. Bureaucratic means when the messenger arrives with bad news, you set up committees and so forth, and you just lose sight of what the problem was. In a generative culture, you're looking to welcome the bad news and find a way to resolve it as quickly as possible. I guess the point about all this is that you're looking to get to that generative culture and work with people. From a management perspective, you're saying to them, look, I'm empowering you to get things done, but I'm going to behave in a generative fashion. And it's incumbent then on an engineer, if he's been treated pathologically, to go back to that manager, perhaps in a quiet moment, and just say, hey, if you want me to own and deliver code to production, you need to be more supportive and get out of my way, and pathological behavior is in my way. So those are the 9 things. I'm going to close with just one important thing. Without a C-suite sponsor, you're really struggling. I mean, it's possible, you can achieve things, but you really do need somebody at the C-suite, and if it's a smaller organization, the CEO. If it's a larger organization, perhaps COO or CTO. But you have to have that from on high approval to go do things and take risk and fail and so forth. Okay, I hope you found this useful.